The War of 1812. The War Thus Far. June 1813. June 1813. We'll see a lot of fighting in the Canadian theater, but that's not all that happens. Once again, there is considerable action at sea. On June the 18th, the War of 1812 will be 1 year old. Somehow I don't think anyone will be celebrating. Two major battles will occur in June. The Battle of Stoney Creek on June the 6th, followed by the Battle of Beaver Dams on June the 24th. I won't be talking about them in this video, but we'll discuss Stoney Creek when I review Strange Fatality, The Battle of Stoney Creek 1813 by James E. Elliott. And I will discuss Beaver Dams when I review The Battle of Beaver Dams, the story of Thorold. I lived near there for 4 years, I can't pronounce it. The story of Thorold's battle in the War of 1812 by Donald Keith Dewar, a little booklet I picked up in my travels. On June the 1st, HMS Shannon will capture the USS Chesapeake, the ship which figured in the infamous Chesapeake Leopard affair of 1807, when the Royal Navy ship stopped the American vessel to search for deserters and open fire when they were refused. According to Wikipedia, the Chesapeake suffered 4 killed and 17 wounded, and were only able to fire 1 shot during the altercation. 4 sailors were taken prisoner by the British, with one London-born Jenkyn Radford hanged from the yardarm for mutiny, desertion, and contempt. The incident sparked considerable outrage in the U.S. and almost started the War of 1812 5 years early. The War of 1807, then. On May the 20th of 1812, command of the Chesapeake was taken over by Captain James Lawrence, who had led the USS Hornet in its victory over the Peacock. Lawrence found an unhappy crew. Many were leaving, their terms of enlistment over, while those that remained were angry that their prize money, earned from the capture of 6 British ships early in 1813, was being held up in court. Lawrence paid the crewmen out of his own pocket, which leads me to ask, why didn't I ever have a boss like that? Should have joined the Navy, I guess. Instead, I joined the library. Blockading Boston was HMS Shannon, under the command of Captain Philip Broke, who had been in charge since 1806. Broke ran a tight ship and drilled his veteran crew in gunnery on a daily basis, while Lawrence, on the other hand, had a basically new crew, not used to working together, which will lead to ominous results. In one of those niceties peculiar to the War of 1812, Broke sent Lawrence a note requesting a fight. A very polite note. Alas, Lawrence will never receive it, for he had already put to sea, leading the Chesapeake to its rendezvous with fate. The ships would meet at 5 on the afternoon of the 1st, and in 6 minutes both managed to fire 2 broadsides, where the superior British gunnery gave them the decisive edge. The Chesapeake's wheel was shot away, and unable to maneuver, it crashed into the Shannon. Captain Lawrence attempted to organize a boarding party, only to be shot by a sniper. his last order before being taken below, has gone down in history as, quote, "Don't give up the ship. Fight her till she sinks." End of quote. Broke led a landing party aboard the Chesapeake and was able to capture the American vessel within 15 minutes. But he was seriously wounded when struck over the head with a sword. In spite of his injuries, Broke had the Chesapeake repaired and sailed to Halifax, where it was pressed into service with the Royal Navy, Lawrence dying en route to Nova Scotia. As statistics may vary, I've decided to go with the casualty figures from the USS Constitution Museum. British, 23 killed, 56 wounded. American, 48 killed, 99 wounded, including Captain James Lawrence, mortally wounded. The USS Growler was part of the Lake Champlain Squadron. It was a 112-ton sloop of war, which boasted an armament of 10 18-pound guns, plus one 6-pounder. But on June 3, 1813, it and USS Eagle were captured by British soldiers from the 100th Regiment of Foot, Prince Regent's County of Dublin Regiment. This action occurred close to the Ile aux Noix on the Richelieu River, following a 3.5-hour firefight in which 3 British soldiers were wounded, with 1 American killed, along with 8 wounded. Both the Growler and the Eagle will be taken into service by the Royal Navy, only to be recaptured by the Americans in 1814. On June 22nd, British forces under Sir George Cockburn attacked the fortifications on Craney Island. Craney Island, C-R-A-N-E-Y. Craney Island, near Norfolk and Portsmouth, Virginia, where, according to historian Alan Taylor, writing in The Internal Enemy, War and Slavery in Virginia, 1772 to 1832, the Americans had built a battery and kept their gunboats. The British dispatched 50 landing barges with troops to capture the island, but American fire sank 2 and drove the rest away. Experiencing heavy casualties, the British will accuse the U.S. of massacring 30 troops from the Independent Company of Foreigners, a British regiment made up of French POWs from the Napoleonic Wars, a charge the Americans hotly deny. The British followed up their attack on Craney Island with a June 25th raid on Hampton, Virginia, starting with a morning bombardment, followed by the landing of 900 troops. The 500 American defenders threw their arms away and ran. To revenge the alleged massacre, the angry French troops then ransacked the town, committing rapes and, according to Alan Taylor, murdering an old man named Kirby in his bed. British officers tried to restrain the troops with no success, and, as an added insult, 30 of the French mercenaries deserted to join the Americans. The Americans had suffered a military defeat, but gained a propaganda victory that, in Taylor's words, allowed them to refute, quote, British claims to superior civility, end of quote. Finally, on June 27th, Wikipedia states that the American privateer Teazer, T-E-A-Z-E-R, Teazer, is blown up in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. Except it wasn't the Teazer, which had actually been captured and burned by HMS San Domingo on January the 17th, 1813. This ship was the young Teazer, which had been built as a replacement vessel and which is described by the Maritime Museum of the Atlantic as, quote, a remarkably fast private schooner. She took many prizes off Nova Scotia, including several right at the mouth of Halifax Harbor. End of quote. Cornered in Mahone Bay, the ship was purposely blown up by Lieutenant Frederick Johnson, who had been an officer on the original Teazer and had been released, but who had broken his parole, i.e., he had promised not to return to action until exchanged for a British prisoner of similar rank. Only around 7 of the crew survived the explosion, with the number of those killed estimated from 28 to 32. Thus, the month of June 1813 went out with a bang. The column Heroes and Villains in the May-June 2023 issue of Legion magazine features the commanders of the Shannon and the Chesapeake, Philip Broke and James Lawrence. As it's a Canadian magazine, I guess Lawrence is the villain. In one of the great ironies in this most ironic war, Lawrence, one of America's greatest naval heroes, was initially buried in Halifax, Nova Scotia, his body being eventually returned to the U.S. But the dead crewmen of both the Chesapeake and the Shannon remain, buried in the appropriately named Dead Man's Island off Halifax Harbor, which I guess makes the American dead now permanent residents. If this is your first visit to 1812 Channel, my name is Warren and I'm your host. I'm not a historian, nor am I an expert on the War of 1812. Instead, I'm a student wishing to learn about the conflict. Each month for the roughly 3 years of the war, I will outline the major events. I will also try to review a book on the war. Did I miss anything? Any errors? I spotted a real howler while I was recording this one. Good thing I fixed it, I think. But let me know about any errors in the comments below. Stay tuned for my upcoming videos on the battles of Stoney Creek and Beaver Dams. When the barrage lifts, cheers! Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Dr. Anne Marie James, and shows yours truly with various reading materials, while the music was the stirring The Descent by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Thank you for listening.